All right, folks, let's take a look at the results of the belief quiz. Now, this was the assignment, y'all, from the very, very beginning of the semester. And this was the one where we were going to try and figure out what your political views were. Well, these are the results, and I've actually plotted these. Bear with me as I juggle my screens. And you will notice that we've got four quadrants that are actually up here on this diagram. Now, I'm going to do some drawing as we go. You will notice here in the very center, this is the origin point. And the closer that you are to the origin, you're going to notice that maybe these are where your views would be plotted as being the most moderate. You'll notice there's Cherie, Ibrahim Taylor, Alyssa, Brian, and Corby. All of y'all are actually one question away. If we changed one question, you could have technically ended up in any of these four quadrants. So maybe it's indecision, maybe it's moderation, maybe you figure things out issue by issue, but y'all are really, really close to the center. You'll notice there's Anastasia, there's Isabella, there's Jose, there's Lafidia. Y'all are about as far away from that center point as we can get. So the further that you are away from that center point, maybe the more extreme or maybe the more diligently you hold your views. Now, as you look at this, this is the bedroom and the wallet quiz. And I just plotted this on basically just graph paper, with the four quadrants, the positive, the positive, the negative, the negative. And the idea on this is that if you know how much a person believes that government should regulate or not regulate economic issues, and if you likewise know how much a person believes that government should regulate or not regulate moral issues, then in fact, you should have a really good idea of what their overall political beliefs are. Now, this horizontal line, y'all, is actually what is known as my wallet line. And this vertical line is actually the bedroom line. And the basic idea is that if you score to the right of this vertical line in the center, so over here, then this is basically saying that you believe that more often than not, government should regulate economic issues. By the same token, if you score to the left of this line, and there's a decent chunk of you that did, you're going to believe, in fact, that government should stay out of economic or wallet issues more often than not. Now, with the bedroom line, we're going to be going up and down. If you scored below, and there's a good chunk of you that scored below this horizontal line, this is basically saying, in fact, that you believe that people can make better decisions for themselves regarding bedroom moral type issues than, in fact, the government can make for them. Now, on the converse of that, if you scored above this horizontal line, and a good chunk of you did, then this is basically saying that government can make better decisions than the people can make for themselves regarding these personal issues, oftentimes things that happen behind closed doors. So let's begin to delve into this a little bit. And I'm going to start down here in this bottom left-hand quadrant. There's Isabella, Taylor, Jaden, Tyler, and there's Dayton. You folks are actually what are going to be known as my libertarians. Libertarians are going to have the mindset, y'all, that the government that governs least is the government that governs best. In other words, if we leave the decision-making power for economic issues or what people are going to be doing with their wallets to the people instead of taking so many tax dollars, then in fact, people are going to be able to better take care of themselves, certainly better than if the government took taxes and then spent their money for them. When it gets to this idea of the bedroom issues, and if you remember some of the quiz questions that were out there, we had things like legalization of weed, abortion issues, we had same-sex marriage, we had prayer, school prayer, these kinds of things. Well, libertarians are going to say that people need to make these decisions as well. Whether you're talking about economics, whether you're talking about morals, that people can make better decisions for themselves than, in fact, government can make for them. Now, y'all, to give you a couple of thoughts on this, libertarians are not the biggest party in the United States, but they've been pretty steady over the years. Libertarians are going to believe, in fact, that weed should be legalized. Why? I mean, is this about, getting high? Actually, no, it's about cutting spending. Because the thoughts is that if you stop all of these arrests, these weed arrests and imprisonments and court cases and things of this sort, guess what? You are actually going to be um, cutting the taxes that are required to pay for all of this, the housing of the people in jail, the feeding of the people in jail, the backlogs in the court. If we just legalized it, then all of a sudden that would require even less taxes coming back to the government from your hard-earned pay. Now, another thing on this, and thinking about this from an economics perspective, y'all, I asked this question in my in-person classes, why are you in college? Well, the general answer on this is I'm in college to get a degree. I need a degree so I can get a better job. I need a better job so that I can make more money to provide for me or the people that are most important to me. Well, the logic here is that if you go to college, if you put in that time and then you earn more once you get out of college, hey, you put in the work. Why is it that you should be punished by having more taxes taken out because you're successful, especially when many of the other people that need help never went to college? Now, I'm not saying that there's a right answer. I'm not saying that there's a wrong answer. I'm just saying that this is the mindset of the libertarian answer. It's you rise on your own merits. You fall on your own merits. It's not about government to prop you up. It's not about government to keep you going higher. It's on you. And if we could get government out of these economic and moral issues, the excessive way that they would argue government is in them, then all of a sudden, not only are we going to have more freedoms, but we're going to have more dollars too. Now, you'll look over here and to the right, we've got our libertarians, and I just drew that little blue line. They share a side with this other group to the right. And you folks that are actually down here, actually my liberals. And I'm going to put a D down here because in the United States, anyway, we typically associate liberals with the Democratic Party. Now, y'all, as you look at this, libertarians and liberals are going to be in lockstep about the idea that what people do behind closed doors with their own personal decisions, they should be free to do. Where they differ, in fact, is that the liberals are going to believe that government should regulate economic issues, maybe Robin Hood things, if you will. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the lore of Robin Hood, but Robin Hood, throughout history, if you will, or at least the stories I've been told, was somebody that took from the rich to give to the poor. President Obama, a number of years ago, well, at least when President Obama was actually president, used to say that the wealthier people in society have benefited from our society, so they should pay a little bit more in taxes. Why? So that other folks can gain the benefits of this society too. So the idea here is instead of having too few people that have too much, we need more people to have enough. Liberals are going to be very strongly interested in regulating economic issues, certainly at least compared to the libertarians. Now, as you look, and I'm going to keep going and just kind of juggle around, sometimes, y'all, you're going to see quadrants that actually share no sides whatsoever. And that means that they're going to be the exact opposite. So I suppose it stands to reason, right, that if in fact the liberals are in the lower right hand quadrant, that in fact our conservatives are going to be in the upper left hand quadrant. Y'all, conservatives, or I'll put an R up here for Republican in the American context. Conservatives are going to believe, in fact, that government needs to conserve or preserve, if you will, the different policies, the different traditions, the different institutions that have, in fact, governed us over a course of time. So, if you think about it, instead of leaving things to the whim and the passion, the irrational passion sometimes of regular everyday citizens, conservatives are going to say, let's put our trust in the institutions. Let's put our trust in not just the institutions, but the church. Let's put our trust in marriage. And I don't mean any marriage, but marriage between Adam and Eve, because that's traditionally the way that it's been, not Adam and Steve, which in fact people might not be as comfortable with. So things like the church, traditions like marriage, the idea of our government institutions, the Congress has been around for hundreds of years now. That's what we're talking. Now, if you put this in the context of what we were just talking about with bedroom and wallet, conservatives are going to be very much in lockstep with the libertarians. Why? They are going to believe, these conservatives, that in fact, if I've gone to college, if I've worked my way up the corporate ladder, hey, I've earned my keep, so I should be able to keep what I earn. And if you don't have enough, don't take it from me. But if you don't have enough, work harder, get another job, go back to school, be responsible for you. Oftentimes, conservatives and libertarians, unlike the liberals, are going to believe that if people are going to be taxed, that in fact everybody should be taxed, not just the wealthiest, but in fact even the poorest citizens, because we're all in this together. And they will agree, in fact, that it's not based on how much you earn, but everybody maybe should be taxed at the exact same percentage. So that way, again, we're all equally in this together. When it comes to morals, and this is new because nobody has talked about this yet, conservatives typically believe that government should regulate moral, personal, behind closed doors kinds of issues because government can make better decisions for people on these issues than, in fact, people can make for themselves. So if you think about the idea of school prayer, liberals and libertarians aren't really going to try and mandate that. That's something that's up to the individual. Conservatives, on the other hand, y'all are going to say, look at school prayer, that is something that can actually help conserve, preserve values, behaviors, morals. Yeah, we want to require this. Same sex marriage? Oh, no. Abortion? Oh, no. Legalization of weed? Oh, no. These are things that people shouldn't be able to make decisions on for themselves because these are decisions where people are going to mess it up. So understand on this. If libertarians are going to believe that government should stay out of everything because the government that governs best is the government that governs least, liberals are going to believe in the Robin Hood idea. Hey, you know what? We are with you in terms of morals, but in fact, government should regulate economics because we need to take from the rich and give to the poor to ensure that too few people don't have too much and more people have enough for what it is that they need. And then conservatives, on the other hand, are going to be like, wait a minute. If I earn my keep, then I should be able to keep what I earn. In other words, government should stay out of my economics. But I do think that there are things that people shouldn't be free, allowed to do, even behind closed doors, personal things. And in fact, government should take the lead in regulating that conduct. Now, my fourth quadrant, and there's Kevin, there's Lafidia, there's Thomas, there's Logan, Alyssa, Brian, and Corby. You folks are my positive people. You folks are my populists. Populists are basically going to believe that government can make better decisions than people can make for themselves in terms of both economics and in terms of moral issues. Populists are going to say that we can make better decisions for the people. So they're going to be very much in lockstep with the conservatives when they say no weed, yes to prayer, no abortion. You see where I'm going with this. But they're going to be very much in lockstep with the liberals in the sense that they're going to believe in regulating economic issues. Y'all, if you ever, have nothing else to do, and this could be a really, cold day in hell by the time this happens, take a walk around to Walmart on a Saturday or a Target on a Saturday and just kind of low key look at some of the things that people are putting in their carts. You could make an argument that when you see what people are spending their money on, it stands to reason that government could make better decisions than these people are making for themselves economically and how they're spending their money. Now, the trick with populists, and I'm sure that you've heard of this from maybe a very current presidential, representative, right? You put me to Washington and I'll drain the swamp. We'll get that filth out of there so that government can run smoothly. Give me the authority and I will fix it for you. Sounds good. And sometimes populists can actually do this sometimes. But the problem is that when you give up too much power and my populists are regulating everything in the name of the good of the people, well, they can get a little punitive when in fact the people don't respect the decisions that government is making. And this becomes dangerous because if you give too much power to any one person or any one institution, then the real possibility of graft, the real possibility of abuse, the real possibility of taking even more power becomes very, very much there. Now, let me close and give you a couple of things to kind of think about here as we go forward. And that's this. You're going to notice as you look at this that we've got four quadrants, and it's always nice to have people in all four of the quadrants. You will notice that that bottom right quadrant probably has more than everybody else. And I want you to think about life as a U. You could make an argument that you're younger here and you're older here and you're middle age here. Well, when you think about this for just a second, think about yourself in college. And I could say this about myself in college. I didn't have a very good job. I was working myself through school. That was really hard to do. I was living at home, so it's not like I had a house, much less an apartment. I mean, I was really dependent upon a lot of others, in addition to my own hustle, to get things that I either wanted or that I needed. Oftentimes, y'all, when people are younger, they are more apt to be liberal because they're going to need more from the government. They're going to need more of that redistribution. They're going to be more of that Robin Hood in order to meet needs and figure out where we're going. Funny thing happens though, when you get to middle age, you've got that job. Maybe you've been married once or twice. Maybe you got a couple of kids. You got a mortgage. You got an SUV. Kind of see where I'm going here. You actually become more conservative at middle age. Why? Because we want government to conserve or to preserve the things that we have. And now we actually have things. So we're probably more conservative at middle age because it's not about what government can give to us, but in fact, it's about what government can protect for us. Now, funny thing happens. Oftentimes, as people get older, they will become more liberal again. The kids are grown. House is paid off. I've retired from the job. In other words, now we're right back in the boat where we're going to be more dependent upon government for the things that we need. If you think about young people want their drugs legalized. When you think about old people want the government to pay for their drugs. I mean, it's a slight difference, but you get the idea. It's the same general argument. So as you look at this, and let me stress and let me erase one last time on this, I am not saying that Anastasia is conservative and she will always be conservative, nor am I saying that Jose is liberal and will always be. I might be saying Lafayette is a dictator because that's the way that Lafayette scored on this. And but I guess what I'm trying to say to you is that when you're younger, not saying that you're automatically going to be liberal, but I'm saying that you're going to be more liberal than you will be at just about any other point in your life. When you get to middle age, not saying that it's guaranteed that you're going to be conservative, but because the circumstances around your life has changed, that means that the perspectives that you have about your life have changed too. And I'm saying that you're more likely to be more conservative at middle age than you are at just about any other point in your life. And then, funny thing, kids grow up, you retire, the house is paid off. Now, all of a sudden, you're back to being more liberal again because there's more of that dependence upon the government. Now, let me say this as you look at this, and I'll leave you with this thought. We were talking about our libertarians down here in the bottom left-hand quadrant. An extreme form of a libertarian, y'all, is actually going to be what's known as an anarchist. And maybe this will surprise you, but understand, anarchism is the absence of government. And you might say, well, how in the devil can that work? Well, technically speaking, y'all, there is no world government in the world today. The United Nations is not a world government. And so we're living in a state of anarchy, and a lot of people in the world are doing okay. Not to say that it's perfect, just to say that it's the reality. We live in a state of anarchy. I don't know. Isabella's a little far away, but I don't know that Isabella would be an anarchist. You notice the liberal bottom right-hand quadrant. The more extreme version of a liberal is probably going to be a communist. And I say this kind of laughing a little bit. I'm not saying that Jose is necessarily a communist or Stefan or Ali. But what I am saying is the way that you believe that government should regulate, this goes back to economics, taking from the rich and giving to the poor. Communists are going to be more likely to want equality for everybody, and they're going to do some extreme taking in order to equalize things out. Now, in this upper left-hand quadrant where the conservatives were, extreme conservatives can actually have some overlap with Nazis. Now, let me stress, I'm not saying that Armando and Anastasia are Nazis, but if you look back at Nazi Germany, man, they would regulate people within an inch of their lives. No ifs, ands, or buts. But if you were one of the chosen, you could actually make an awful lot of money in Nazi Germany. So understand the idea of regulating the morals, but staying out of the economics. There's something to be said for Nazis in that. And then in my upper right-hand quadrant up here, you'll notice there's Lafayette, the one that's the furthest away. Populists, y'all, typically have control issues. And my populace, oftentimes, if unchecked, will become dictators. Lafayette might be the person in class who's most likely to be the dictator, because understand when you start doing things and it works, as a populist, you start doing more things and more things and more things. And the only thing that's probably more exhilarating than when things work is the frustration that you feel when they don't. And these populists slash dictators have a tendency to become very punitive with things when they don't work the way that they want. I hope y'all have enjoyed the results of this. You will notice in there that your class is really well rounded in that they're in all four of the quadrants. If you have any questions about this, to be sure, reach out and let me know. Good luck on this bonus quiz, and I will have this active for you very soon. Bye, y'all.